childbirth. It seems to come so easily for so many women. Yet, according to the Centers for Disease Control, about 10% of women in the United States between the ages of 15 and 44 have difficulty getting pregnant or staying pregnant. 10%. That's roughly 6.1 million women. Though many may believe it to be true, infertility isn't always the woman's problem. Men suffer from infertility issues as well. The bottom line, though, is that couples or individuals who want to start a family and have children of their own are sadly unable to do so as biological parents. But for a woman who is unable to conceive a child, is that where the desire for motherhood ceases to exist? Should that be the end for her? Welcome to Midlife A Go-Go, the podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Albarda.
It's Midlife A Go-Go, the show that's on a mission to help women navigate this crazy thing called midlife. It's time to come out of the background and celebrate the second chapter of our lives. There'll be frank discussions on menopause, body image, relationships, sex, and more. Join Midlife A Go-Go on this journey where you'll discover you can have the midlife and skip the crisis.
Being a mother is about more than giving birth. It's about nurturing and caring and what you have in your heart. Some mothers can't do that. Carla Carlisle yearned to be a mother, but infertility issues and a miscarriage made that dream seem out of reach for her. But Carla's heart wouldn't allow her to give up. She became a foster mother to a tiny 10-day-old, 2 months premature baby boy. And so began her long journey to fight for the life of this child that she would one day call her own son. This is Carla's story. Well, thank you so much, Carla, for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I want to let my audience know a little bit about how we met. Now, Carla and I are both speakers from the TEDx Charlotte 2020.
Yes.
And it was such an amazing experience for both of us. The really odd thing about that for us, though, is that we have not met in person.
That's right. That's right.
We have not had that pleasure because of coronavirus. But Carla and I connected, and we have stayed connected, and she is just good people. Let me tell you all that. Let me tell you. And she had a wonderful talk, and Carla is a very accomplished woman. I'm really excited about getting into what she has done with her life, but I really want to get into her book. Carla is an author, and she has written a tremendous story called Journey to the Sun. Carla, tell us about this book.
Well, thank you, Valerie. And again, thank you for having me. The book is a memoir, and it chronicles my 8-year journey to my son. I started off married in a really tough marriage. My husband and I experienced infidelity on his part. There was infertility. We went through in vitro fertilization. I did get pregnant, but I miscarried, and the marriage was already in trouble. So I would just say that kind of set us over the edge. And eventually we divorced. After our divorce, I ended up becoming a foster parent. And that's when I met my amazing little boy. He was just 10 days old, and I was his foster mother for the first 6 months of his life. After 6 months, he was given back to his birth parents, And I knew he was in trouble. I couldn't put words around it, but I decided to let my foster license expire, and I co-parented with his birth parents for about 6 years. And this book talks about me just learning about intergenerational trauma, which is unresolved trauma that's passed down from generation to generation. So this is a lot of the experiences both of his parents had, and my son was just in line for that same experience. And what I've since learned, becoming trauma informed, is that there are interventions for children and the family overall, but there has to be an availability of services and interest, some level of connection.
Mm-hmm.
So in our case, my son, he just had really significant reactions and PTSD actually from all of the trauma he experienced with his birth parents. And when he was 6, he ended up having some pretty devastating experiences, and I ended up getting emergency custody. And then fast forward through lots of trauma, court, trials and tribulations, a village of support, and the adoption was finalized in 2018. So we are continuing to grow together. But the blessing in all this is not only that I became a mother, but I also was just awakened to the impact of trauma on our lives and what can happen if, there's no help, if there's no, loving advocate to provide that support. And so that's kind of turned into my life's mission, is to help people get trauma informed and support those who haven't yet found their voice.
Mm. Now, you mentioned PTSD. I don't think that's something that people realize that children can experience.
Yes. So we were involved in a documentary a couple of years ago, and my son was actually in the documentary as well. And it was about PTSD and trauma. And of course, when most people think about post-traumatic stress disorder, they think about veterans,
Mhm.
which certainly the veteran population is heavily impacted by PTSD. But anyone can get PTSD, whether it's from a bad car accident. I'll give you an example of one of the people closest to me went through 2 bouts with cancer. The second time she got cancer, she had major anxiety attacks and really like these triggers from going through chemo again. And it was, very much like post traumatic stress disorder. Literally, she had a physical reaction to the memory of that trauma from chemo, which, can be devastating and also life saving at the same time. So, my son was diagnosed with PTSD and a number of other diagnoses, but they're all kind of under that umbrella of PTSD. And so it's just been a real learning experience for me, understanding how to parent him. I also got involved with the crisis intervention team, which trains law enforcement and first responders on how to handle someone dealing with a mental health crisis. And I did that, one, because of concern for my own son as the mother of a, young Black son. But even if he wasn't Black, I would still be concerned just because his trauma response, typically they're fight, flight, or freeze. And he's a fighter.
Mhm.
And so, someone coming up on him wouldn't think like, oh, well, he's been through so much and let's try to calm him and things. They just see that behavior and may not ask questions first. So I had, a real vested interest in helping to train law enforcement. And I'm just so happy and humbled to share that I received the CIT Team Member of the Year award for 2020 through Mecklenburg County. And it's just such a blessing because I feel like sharing our story really has made a difference and enlightened some people who may not have been that open to it. I think when you talk about something going on with a child versus an adult, people tend to soften a little bit. So it's just been an amazing journey to date.
Well, first, I want to say congratulations to you for receiving that award. And I know it was very well earned. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
And secondly, what a strong woman you are. And as women, people expect us to take on so much and to keep moving forward. But I have to say that as a Black woman, I am so proud to see other strong Black women moving forward and pulling their families together. And here you are, a single Black woman taking this on and showing the world that you care, and you're taking on this young Black boy, and you are going to raise such a wonderful man. And in this day and age, how difficult it is, and the problems that are taking place, and the fear of sending a young Black man out into the world, and you're having to rear him up in this day and age. I commend you for every single step that you have taken thus far, and I am standing beside you as you continue on, sister.
Well, thank you so much for that. I have to say that I don't see myself as anyone so remarkable as much as I'm just like a person who loves this child. Like, he was always my baby. He always called me mommy. I was with him since he was
Mhm.
10 days old, and I feel like we rise to the occasion when we need to, and then once our eyes are open, it's like that saying when they say, when you know better, you have to do
Mhm.
better. Once I learned like firsthand the kinds of experiences his birth parents had, and I saw that this is a cycle that would continue, that wasn't my life. I grew up in this Cosby Show type family, but set in a small factory town, and I had this foundation of love and support. When you are living life in survival mode, it's hard to think about the things that seem so important to maybe you and me. It's more like, am I going to live today? Am I going to have food today? Am I going to get hit today? It's those kinds of things that are so heavy, but so real.
Mhm.
And now that I know that, it's interesting because my son now complains about, Mom, you didn't get dessert. And I'm like, it's sometimes it's a little irritating, but honestly, I'm glad that he can complain about something as small as, oh, I forgot dessert. Because that just says like he feels safe. He's a little
Mhm.
spoiled, but we don't have to focus on the things that are just so gut wrenching.
Right.
When a kid feels safe, then the other things can really, with a lot of work, fall into place.
Right. Yeah, you said something that was very touching, that you met him, you first saw him when he was 10 days old, and that was an unshakable bond for you.
Yes,
Your motherly instinct kicked in at that moment.
absolutely.
I am not a biological mother. I chose not to have children. I am a stepmother now, and my stepson is 19. That's nothing like parenting. And I did not have the benefit of raising him. He did not move here into our home until he was 18. So
Hmm.
I don't have the joys and the pains of, watching him grow up in that manner. So I don't have the experience of other mothers. So sometimes when I hear my friends talk about their grandkids now, and all of these wonderful things that are taking place in their lives, I don't have that. I don't have that experience. I don't have that lens to view. And sometimes it feels a little empty, but I made my choice. I don't regret it. It's the choice that I made.
Right.
You've made a choice. You made a conscious decision, and you kept this child in your life, and you've given him a better life. And like you said, he's been calling you mommy from, I mean, that's just so touching. It's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, I will tell you that I never thought in my life that this would be my motherhood journey. And I don't know if I shared with you that I have two older boys who came to live with us when they were around 16.
Hmm.
They're 19 now. So I've had a lot of jumps in terms of motherhood. So, getting teen boys when they're 16, and then, without that being involved early on, and then having my youngest, since he was little, but there are all kinds of dynamics and things that go on. And then this is a very testosterone heavy family, right?
Mhm.
I've got three boys, three dogs, and two of the three dogs are boys. So it's just a rough and tumble household. I said, I never in a million years thought my life would look like this. And I definitely came to motherhood late in life. I think everyone's journey is different. And I certainly didn't expect mine to look like this, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I truly believe that my life is as it's supposed to be. And I'm able to really help push the dial forward in terms of these young men and their lives, but also touching other people too, as I've been touched and as I've been helped and supported. I've got this amazing village of support that I never expected to have.
Mhm.
So life just looks different. But what I will say is that I had to make a shift last year and really into this year to focus on self, because I had just emptied myself taking care of everyone else. And I realized that I was struggling. I had not done just the basic things we do to take care of ourselves, like go to the dentist, go to the optometrist, get a physical, those things, but also like what brought me joy was definitely my kids, but I had to have that adult life too. So once we got past some of the crises that just were so consuming, I had to take a step back and say, I have to fill up my cup too.
Mhm.
And so that's what I've been focused on really the last couple of years. And as I share my story, I focus a lot more on self care and the lessons I've learned about enabling versus supporting. I've taken things like a mental health first aid and QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer. And what I've learned from that is, of course, I don't have all the answers, and I always knew that, but I felt that my heart and my drive to support others was enough, instead of realizing, like, hey, I'm not the expert here, just like I can't do surgery on someone, right? So I need to, even when it came to his birth parents, I had to realize that I could not make their lives better,
Mhm.
no matter how much I tried, and I was not qualified to do that. There are mental health professionals that would be much more equipped with providing support than me. And I was too personally involved anyway.
Mhm.
So I've really just learned lessons establishing healthier boundaries with people, not trying to fix everything myself, and then just taking better care of me. So I've gotten into this exercise regimen. I'm still working on, I've been doing intermittent fasting, more meditation, praying, those things that give me energy. And what that looks like has changed over time and with experiences.
One thing I think we really have to remember is we can't do it all.
Yes.
And I know sometimes for myself, as a midlife woman, I've gotten to this point in life where I have to pull myself back
Yes.
and really realize, Valerie, you don't need to do A through Z. Do A through D and let somebody else handle some of the other things.
Yes.
There's such a thing
Absolutely.
as delegating, and
Yes.
and we can help and take care of others, but we must also remember that we need to
Mhm.
take care of ourselves. And self-care, and I was just telling my husband this the other day, self-care is not just getting a manicure and pedicure.
Right.
It's
That's
so
right.
much
Although that's
more
nice.
than that. It is so
That's
much
right.
more than that. It is not just about, it's mind, body, and spirit.
Yes, it is. It really is.
And I've actually lately gotten into meditating. And the reason why I've done that is, and I've told you this already, and I've recently come out of the MS closet. I was recently diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I've started meditating a bit I'm helping to center myself because I really need to cut back on the stress.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I continue to get stressed, I may have a flare up.
Yes.
I don't want that. I don't want to be living in pain. I don't want to be taking trips back and forth to the hospital. I don't want to put more stress on my body, more stress on my husband as my caregiver. I really need to take care of myself. And again, it's mind, body, and spirit. And as much as I love a good mani-pedi, I know sometimes my mind needs it just as much.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm finding now about exercise too, is just those endorphins. It gets you going and there's a level of release that's so great. But even, I'm doing a lot on the Peloton, there's a meditation component of that. And I've started this 2-week sleep program. And it's a meditation program. And I've just found it, it starts off like 5 minutes a night, then it's 10 minutes a night. And it's just to help you kind of let go of the day and the worries and the what I accomplished and what I didn't, and all the little nuances, and it just helps you center yourself and release and let go so you can get a restful night's sleep.
Hmm. Yeah. A good night's sleep. And as I hate to say it, I am older now. I don't
Yes.
just fall asleep as soon as my head hits the pillow. No, although I will take that back because with some of the medications that I'm on, I turn off the TV, roll over, and I am out like a light. And for some reason, this is so funny. My husband even started recording me in the middle of the night. I am humming a tune. I have no idea
Oh my
why.
goodness.
My husband, he has to kind of shake me in the middle of the night to get me out of it, but I must be content or something, but I am humming in my
Hmm.
sleep. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to mention, Valerie, when we were talking about self care, is that's also one of the things that leads me back to writing. So I started off when I did my book, Journey to the Sun, with a ghostwriter turned co author. And I put so much of myself into the book. Since then, I have been writing other things, and I just became a staff storyteller with adoption.com, which is awesome. And so I have my first couple of stories coming up there, but I had a couple of pieces posted like blog spots nationally, and I just find such a release. And what's even better about it is not only does writing, and it doesn't mean you have to be published, it's just a way of to express self, but it also has helped other people. And that's a big thing to me. Like I always look at, what is the legacy I will leave? And I think a lot about doing for others. It's just really important to me. And it's something I definitely want to pass down to my children as well.
Well, writing is very cathartic. And my husband keeps telling me I really need to get back into my writing, which is my creative side. I have my website and I do some writing for that. I've really kind of lost touch with it as of late, but my creative writing has really suffered in the last year. And I need to get back to that. I need to find my way back to it because that's truly where I shine.
Hmm.
And I have written a couple of pieces for the National MS Society. Now, another thing that I would really like to touch on, because here's where I think we kind of have some simpatico as well, is being advocates. Now, for me, I had to advocate for myself in pushing for a diagnosis of MS. And I know that you are a strong advocate. So let's talk about your advocacy work.
Yes, definitely. I think it does start with self. The truth of the matter is that I advocated for my son and I just did not leave any stone unturned. Every time I heard no, it made me more determined. I was going to do anything that I could and everything that I could to change the trajectory of his life. What I had to learn to do was to advocate for
Mhm.
myself. So while I feel very strongly and I advocate for mental health and for children, I had to look at me. And again, take care of myself. It's just like me finding the right thing to help me in terms of exercise. But, I started looking up. When I looked up, my cholesterol was high, my blood pressure was a little elevated, and those are things I've never experienced before. And I'm like, okay, I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm not a spring chicken, although I feel like one most of the time. It's time to really take care of self. So while I do things like, I've done events across the Charlotte region around mental health and wellness, and I work with a lot of different organizations like Mental Health America, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm on different committees and boards trying to move the needle forward in terms of removing the stigma of mental health.
Mhm.
Again, I have to start with me and my household. It's not hard for me to take care of the household. It's the refocus on me. And I think a lot of times, especially as women, we tend to put ourselves last. And I've realized that that's not really the healthiest approach, because it's really true. You cannot truly help someone when you're empty.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, we truly can't. And when we're running on empty, it's like when you're on an airplane and they say, put your mask on first before you help someone else. There's a reason for that, because
Yeah,
if we have run ourselves ragged, how can we help others if that's what we have a heart to do? So it's good to take care of ourselves for ourselves. But if we have a mind and a heart that is leaning more towards the giving nature and helping, then we have to keep ourselves up as well.
absolutely. And that's something that I'm just, it was no New Year's resolution. It was nothing of that nature. It was just to say, I deserve it.
Mhm.
I don't need someone else to tell me I deserve it. And for me to really take care of these boys, especially, to have a son who's considered special needs, it takes extra effort and energy. And if I don't take care of myself, then what would happen to him? I mean, nothing is guaranteed, and I can have things in place to support him, but I can have the longest relationship with him possible by taking care of myself. I can affect more change by taking care of myself. I can just be the best me possible by putting myself first.
So, what is in Carla Carlisle's future in terms of advocacy work, in terms of your writing, any speaking engagements, things like that?
So, in terms of my future, I have a number of podcasts that I'm doing. I've been doing more of those lately because of the pandemic. I have the calendar up for what I'm going to be doing as far as working with law enforcement. That's with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, as well as the Department of Health and local law enforcement. So I'll be working on that. I have just published another book. I'm a contributor to a book. It has a very long title, so I'll read it to you.
Mhm.
Change, Creativity, Curiosity, and Hope in a Crisis Called Pandemic. And it's poetry and short stories by North Carolina writers and members of the Writing Boot Camp Charlotte. I was a member of Writing Boot Camp Charlotte, and Glenn Proctor, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, heads up that boot camp. And Glenn has been a great writing coach and mentor. So that book was just published. And then I have a children's book. It's more like a workbook in the works, just to help children, coming from a child's point of view, with coping mechanisms and how to self calm. It's by no means meant to be a book that a therapist would use necessarily, but there are these tips and tricks that you learn along the way. And I see some things worked better with my son than not. But, we're just going to share a couple of things. And he's like my editor, telling
Mhm.
me some of the things he wants to include and not. But I think that there's something so remarkable about real life experience.
Mhm.
And while I'm working with a therapist to have her review the book, it's just something that I think would be helpful, because you don't hear a lot about books for children who have experienced trauma. And I think there's a way to lighten it a little bit, but make it meaningful. So that's what I have in the works. And as I mentioned, I think that I am writing for adoption.com now. And so that's going to be really interesting. The whole concept of foster care and adoption is something, especially in the African American community, you may hear about, but you don't, we don't necessarily share the firsthand story. So I want to share that journey as well.
Okay. So how is your son doing?
My son is awesome. So we've gone from really, really tough times to a lot of progress forward. He's a math whiz. He's extremely charming and generous. He's just a great kid. Now, we certainly have episodes where his behavior gets a little extreme, but it's nothing like what we experienced in the past. And it's within probably the realm of what you might see with a 10-year-old boy, any 10-year-old boy. So we continue to work on it, and life is really good right now.
So what about his birth parents? Are they in the picture at all?
No, unfortunately, because of violence and threats and things like that, his birth parents are not involved. He has not seen them since 2016. And I did see them through court. But unfortunately, they're still pretty sick. And since they're not getting help right now, it would be detrimental to him to have a relationship. And there are just really safety concerns around that. But what I do think is important to share is that as a parent, it's important that I not poison his mind against his birth parents, because one day he may decide that he wants to see them, when he gets older. So, what I share, and then this is through, working with a therapist and things, is that it's fine to love them. It's fine to love them. I don't talk that much about the love they have for him, because I don't want him, and the therapist shared this with me, I don't want him to think that love hurts.
Mm,
So we talk more about, his parents are sick. They're not doing that well right now, but we pray for them and we want the best for them, and he can love them and still love me. Love is not a pie. Love is open, and there's plenty of love to go around. So that's kind of where we've left the situation. And, I just hope the best for his birth parents. And one day, hopefully, things will be better.
that's wonderful because I mean, if this were a made for TV movie, there'd just be all kinds of trash talking taking place and poisoning the mind and it just wouldn't be all around. It would just be horrible. So it's really good to see and to hear you say that you're not poisoning his mind with that, and for him to know that you're coming from the mindset of saying his parents are sick,
Yes,
not that his parents are bad and evil people. They're
right.
sick.
And it's really true. I try to take a fact based approach with him. There are definitely, feelings of the heart. There are, we went through a lot together with his birth parents, because I was there with them for 6 years. I bought them a house. I put them in a house. I tried my best to provide for that home. And I had to just learn over time that I was more enabling them to stay sick and dependent on these really negative coping mechanisms like drugs and alcohol than I was helping them to get healthier. So that was quite the learning experience for me. And he also saw scenarios where his parents treated me really poorly. He saw his mother hit me in the face just through a normal disagreement. And that was so different from my life to date. But, it just goes to show you, like, none of us are above or beyond anything. And that was quite the humbling experience for me. And then I had to handle it properly as a mother, as a parent, to say that was wrong. You still love your mother, and I still care about your mom. Without your mom, there would be no you. So I'm going to forever be grateful. However, it's not okay to hit, and it's not okay to cross that kind of boundary. So we have to put safety first.
Right. So you are teaching him some tremendous life lessons, and he is now in a loving home with a mother who loves him dearly. And he will grow up knowing that.
He better,
He,
that little turkey. He's
he
a mess, I tell you.
no, he will definitely grow up knowing that. And you have laid the foundation for him to grow up to be a good man.
It's just interesting, and thank you for that first and foremost. But it's really just interesting. I have to tell you, I have like two graduate degrees in kind of business fields and certificates up on the wall and things. And as soon as I met this little boy, that was totally irrelevant. And when I found that he was in jeopardy, or I felt that I was in jeopardy, it did. These degrees did not prepare me at all for this challenge
Mhm.
and this growth. So, I mean, this has been a life-changing experience, and I've learned how to funnel those challenges and that growth into something pretty amazing, I think. And it enables me to be more than what I was. I would volunteer and that kind of thing, but now I have this lived experience to share. And I feel like it can enlighten, but also just shed a spotlight on some people who have suffered so much in silence. I feel like this all happened because it was supposed to.
Mhm. Well, you definitely have a voice, and what you have to say, people will listen to. And it's an amazing story. And that you have taken it upon yourself to basically turn your life upside down and create something new for someone else. It's one of the most unselfish things that a person can do, to take on the life of another. You have opened your heart and your home to someone, and you've basically rescued him.
Well, I'll tell you, Valerie, it's so interesting. So I don't know how much you follow or read the Bible, and I'm going to probably mess this up, but I'll tell you when I realized that I was truly his mom. So I'd been fighting for so long to be his mom and to keep him safe and all those things. But it wasn't until when he was 6, he tried to die by suicide twice.
Hmm.
And you talking about feeling so helpless and hopeless. Like, what can I do? I didn't have any legal rights. I didn't know what to do. And I finally found an attorney who would take my case. And in 3 days, I had emergency custody. However, before I found that attorney, it looked like the only option I had was to go through like social services. And what can happen when you go through social services is that if they take the child's mother could have said, I don't want Carla to have him. And they would have to abide by her wish. He would just go into the system. And so I had to be willing to lose him to save him. And I knew, like the story in the Bible, the two women who wanted the child, and one of the mothers said, no, don't cut the baby in half. And then she was given the child because the judge said the mother would sacrifice her relationship to save the child.
Hmm.
And so in this situation, while I'm not by any means saying I'm some heroine, what I will say is that my love for him was strong enough that I had to be willing to lose him. And to me, that would be the ultimate sacrifice. Thank goodness it didn't happen that way. And
Right.
everything's worked out according to the plan. Not my plan, but it was the plan. And life is pretty darn good.
I am happy for you both. Tremendously happy. I will have all your contact information in the show notes with links to the books, as well as any other links that you would like to provide for my audience if they want to get in touch with you or to check you out. Carla, you are an amazing woman.
And Valerie, I can't say enough about you. I think you're remarkable. And I'm so glad we connected. It's just interesting with COVID how everything worked out. Like we really didn't see each other and we still haven't seen each other. I love how we've supported each other through this whole TED experience.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknown with, what are the next steps? What are we going to do? What are we going to wear? What are we going to say? Are we going to do a great job? And, a lot of times, even with my boys, I say, there are times when I just don't feel like I can pull it together, but there's something inside. And then having the support of others, even people you haven't met, like you and I, right? That just gives a level of support that is needed to make it through.
Yeah, I
And
remember
to come
that.
out with something great. Yes.
Days before we went to the theater to record, we were on the phone, gabbing with one another, sending texts back and forth, copies of, what about this outfit? Should I wear this? Should I wear that?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and it all turned out okay, and
Yes.
but yeah, I'm so glad to have connected with you, and I thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all of your support. I'm happy to share my contact information. I know you'll provide it in links along with the episode.
Certainly will. Well, you have a wonderful day now.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Midlife A Go-Go, the podcast. And like me, perhaps you find my guest, Carla Carlisle, a very fascinating woman. Don't forget to check the show notes to find out where you can find Carla on the internet and check out a copy of her book, Journey to the Sun. Thanks for listening today. I hope you'll join me on the next episode, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Until next time.